and welcome to Weird Around Illinois. You know, if you study Illinois hauntings as much as we do, every now and then you're going to come across a tale of a town in the southwest or western suburbs of Chicago that is allegedly haunted by elephants. I think it's time to take a closer look at that. So let's get weird. Early in the morning, on June 22nd, 1918, before the sun had even come up, a Hagenbeck-Wallace circus train heading for Indiana from Illinois was stopped on the Michigan Central Railway tracks to fix an overheated axle box. They tried to pull it onto a siding, but the 25-plus car train was too big, and several cars were left on the main track. These were the caboose and the sleeper cars, where some 400 circus performers and what they call roustabouts were sleeping. But someone else was sleeping that night too. The engineer operating a 21-car troop train that was bearing down on the circus train at high speed. Even though the flagman had set signals, flares, lanterns, everything he could do, the engineer was not awake to see them, and the military train struck its resting target without slowing down. Accounts of the speed at impact vary anywhere from 35 miles per hour all the way up to 60 miles per hour. But whatever the speed, the result was catastrophic. The speeding train plowed through the rear of the circus train, finally coming to rest on top of the fourth car from the back, killing 60 people and wounding 127 more. 86 people and wounding 127 more. Many died from the impact, but even more horrifically, many more died when the wooden train cars caught fire. And the gas lighting system for the train didn't help that matter. Another thing that didn't help is there apparently was a lack of availability of water for the local Gary, Indiana fire department. So the scene was a nightmare, with fire and wreckage and bodies of performers, clowns, and support crew all over the place. It took hours to extract all the bodies from the crash. One of the most heartbreaking memories was of Joe Coyle, a clown, weeping on a stretcher over the loss of his wife and two babies who had been crushed to death just inches away from him.
Yeah, from that's quite an incident, a tragedy.
Yeah. Not surprising that there would be more to this story in the future.
Yeah, that's something in the history books for sure. From there, a lot of rumors ended up spreading out about animals that happened to be in that train, or that escaped or were killed, etc. A lot of unfortunate stuff that led along with a bunch of humans being killed in this tragedy. There were many odd, very unexplained reports of different demented circus people maybe escaping the train or evading people and doctors, and they just disappeared into the woods. Apparently a woman specifically had that kind of situation happen, and she was never found again, a circus woman. Another person, engineer Alonzo K. Sargent, was arrested at the same night, charged with multiple accounts of manslaughter.
Yeah, he was the engineer of the military train. He was later acquitted, but he was arrested and charged.
So I guess we can assume that he was kind of labeled as the person responsible for most of this situation and how so many lives were lost from that.
Yeah.
So 4 days after that crash, survivors gathered at Woodlawn Cemetery, which is where the Showmen's League of America had recently just so happened to select that burial plot for members. And they had no idea when this happened, that in the future there would be this horrible thing to happen. So that was a really interesting coincidence that I'd look into more, because that's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, they had 750 grave sites, I think, in Showman's Rest at Woodlawn Cemetery, and this used one-sixth of them? Or 1/8 of them, something like that. It was a really large proportion.
Yeah.
There are a lot of trucks. Smash through the trains, come on. We don't have time for your nonsense. Hopefully end up running into an airplane ticket.
There are a few that took off.
looked up, it was like right in front of you, like 30 feet off the ground. Yeah, I thought it would look more like that road on the right.
What road?
Exactly.
At Woodlawn Cemetery, in the Showman's Rest area, the boundaries are marked by 5 elephant statues that surround those 750 grave sites. The rumor is that there were 5 elephants killed in the train wreck, and another rumor is that the elephants tried in vain to use their trunks to extinguish the burning circus cars, only to die for their efforts. They say that the elephants were too heavy to move, and so they were buried near the spot where they fell. The identity of many of the victims of the train wreck were unknown. Some of this is because the aforementioned roustabouts, these were like homeless people and people who were on the run from the police, or people who for whatever reason were living off the grid at the time. There was an old saying, I'm going to run away and join the circus. And that's what some of these people did. They got away from their lives by running away and joining the circus. So they weren't using their real names or any name at all in some cases. And some of them had been there such a short time that they didn't really get to know them very well.
Showman's Rest might be this side. I'm not seeing the unknown grave.
These are all recent. Oh, yeah.
Commemorating this. And there's graves marked in there.
Well, I mean, there's an elephant right there. Like an elephant drawing.
These are all too recent.
And the other thing is that some of the bodies were so badly burned and mangled that people didn't even recognize them. They didn't know who was who. So there's a lot of unmarked grave sites there. There's one marked Smiley, there's one marked Baldy, 4-horse driver. Some of the famous people at the time, there was the Flying Wards. They were a trapeze act. They lost a member. One of the McDoo sisters who rode elephants and did aerial stunts. They passed away there. 2 of the strong men died. I will say that we visited this site just recently, and it was quite striking to see all those unknown graves next to each other. I think we counted over 40 unknowns out there.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful plaque there commemorating the people who died on the train, and of course there are the elephant statues up there. It's a very fitting tribute to them, I think, there, but still just a horrifying thing to think about.
Yeah, it's one of the very rare cemeteries that I've seen where there's just rows and rows of just the same thing. I'm not sure if there were numbers or something along with it, but it was just all unknown, and it was...
And all the same date. That's the really shocking part. I don't think I've ever been to a mass burial site like that before. But yeah, it's creepy to just think that, these 3 rows of people all died at almost the same moment on the same night.
Yeah.
It looked like a good chunk of that cemetery that was dedicated to this.
Yeah.
The cemetery was huge, like you mentioned.
It had to be at least like 1/4, heck, maybe even half. We missed a bit, but yeah, it looked like a good 1/4 of it.
You mean the part of Showman's Rest that went to the train, or you mean the part of the cemetery that went to Showman's Rest?
Probably the Showman's Rest part, but
okay. Yeah, I think you're right. The numbers say like 1/8, but I think a lot of it isn't filled yet. So
okay.
I think of the full graves, I think you're right. I think it's probably like 1/4 or more. Showman's Rest is supposed to be a place for circus performers to be buried if they don't have a familial plot of their own.
This is not the plaque I was thinking of, but it's a good plaque.
So that's right behind the elephant. So there's supposed to be blank plaques here?
They just say unknown.
Oh,
They would have all died on June 22nd.
interesting. Okay, a lot.
Yep, these are all from the crash. This is the plaque.
Okay.
As you can see, we know the names of the performers. Here we go. Unknown male number 19.
Oh wow.
Unknown male 20. Unknown male number 21. These are all those people who had just started working for the circus a day or two before. Nobody even knew who they were yet. And they're in that train class.
It's a shame.
So it's not surprising with all this tragedy centered around these people who died there that people would immediately start to think that maybe some of these souls are tormented and not at rest. And that's where hauntings come from.
Yeah, with all of the deaths that supposedly happened and were eventually buried there, like you said, it's no wonder why there's so many possible hauntings.
Mm-hmm.
And one possible haunting is people have supposedly heard the sound of elephants, like the sounds that they make with their trunks.
Oh, like the trumpeting sounds.
Yeah.
That would match the theme.
Yeah.
People sometimes also feel like vibrations of elephants, like stomping around. It sounds pretty creepy, especially if it's at night.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what the heck is that?
Yeah. Is it ghost elephants, or have the statues come to life, or?
Yeah. When we came there, it was like super dark and pretty cold. So I mean, if we heard, or I'm sorry, felt like footsteps and heard stuff at the same time, that would have been much more terrifying.
Yeah, definitely.
And also, apparently voices could be heard, and like a possible crowd or just people talking. That's also pretty creepy, and that's something we hear from a lot of stories in general, where people are just talking yet there's no one around.
Right. So that's the story of the hauntings and the story of the tragedy. Now let's talk about why those hauntings may not be accurate reports.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's some errors in this. So, there were no elephants buried there, and the statues weren't added until years after the train wreck. Now, this is certainly news, considering for the past few minutes we've been talking about how relevant the 5 elephants, around the cemetery are, and just how crazy it is. But apparently that wasn't the case. There were no elephants there.
No, they were just a tribute to Showmen's Rest in general, a tribute to the circus performers. That's why they have their heads bowed kind of in reverence, and they have like one foot raised in celebration of the people who passed.
Yeah. So the elephant idea was to match the theme of circus and to honor them, as you said. Another interesting thing is that there were actually no animals there on that train at all that crashed. All the stories that were across the internet that we found don't really represent what truly happened there.
Yeah, you have to kind of do a deep dive, because some stories will tell you that the elephants saved people's lives and they didn't get a proper burial, and that's why this place is haunted by them. And you could probably find 5 stories saying that for every one that'll actually go the next step and say, oh, by the way, there were no elephants on that train, there are no elephants buried there, and people are imagining things.
Yes, that's the danger of the internet for sure. I mean, there's a lot of stories that will give you misinformation about this, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, digging deep, this is just a theme, not real stuff.
So then that begs the question, why are people hearing elephants? Or why were people hearing elephants?
And were those things real, those encounters?
Mm-hmm. But it turns out there's an explanation for that too.
Yeah.
It's possible that they were actually hearing it from Brookfield Zoo, which is just like a few miles away.
Yeah. Now Brookfield Zoo doesn't have elephants anymore, but they did for many, many years. And when we went to check the place out, we drove right by Brookfield Zoo.
Yeah.
I mean, it is not far at all. You could definitely hear an elephant trumpeting from there.
Yeah, I think they used to have elephants, but they don't anymore, right?
Right. Yeah, they had them for many years. It's relatively recent that they stopped having elephants there.
So basically the tragedy was still real, but on the animal side of things, there's a lot that can explain why these weird phenomenons happened, and we just disproved them.
Yeah, and even the phenomenon about the voices and the people and the music. I mean, there's a lot going on in that area. We were right next to like 2 major roads, and there were a lot of businesses around, and heck, there were people walking. There was some dude walking through the cemetery at like 11 o'clock at night when we were there.
Oh yeah, I probably got that on camera.
Yeah.
The guy was just like holding a flashlight or walking around.
Yeah.
And I know there's not usually like circus music here, but we're right next to a funeral home. So of course you're gonna hear music, maybe slower, but still.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
61 people.
61 unknowns.
61 deaths.
Oh, okay, so total.
30 or 40 unknowns.
Wow.
Oh, I guess 46 unknowns. Okay, maybe it was 61 unknowns. Wow. I thought it was only 61 total, but there's 61 unknown males here. Unless they were just numbering all the people who died.
And it just goes on.
No, they didn't number them all.
Somebody left a penny for Sophia.
Yeah, Jay Sandra, they didn't put a number on him.
So who's to say that wasn't somewhere over 100 people who passed away in this accident, and 61 weren't the unaccounted number?
Yeah. Why does unknown male seem to start at 19?
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm kind of inclined to think that they were just numbering all the people.
Show you it back.
Yeah.
Yes, there is someone walking.
We found all 61 graves in the plaque. What's it look like?
I mean, this is a bigger discussion that maybe we can address another time, but the problem I always have with haunted cemeteries is, those 86 people didn't die in that cemetery. That's where they put their bodies after their souls had already left their bodies. So why would they haunt that cemetery? I would think the site of the crash is where these tortured souls would be.
Yeah, the only explanation I can give you is that the context behind why they went there in the first place, the show owner set that up, the cemetery. But yeah, other than that idea, other than that fact that it was preset for them, there's really no explanation why.
Yeah. So that was the story of the ghost elephants of Forest Park, Illinois. I think I'm ready to wrap this one up. I don't think we need to go and visit again. I think this is a case solved. But if any of you have another take on it, we would love to hear your take on it. And if you have any personal stories of hauntings in Forest Park or anywhere else for that matter, we'd love to hear about it. So as always, thank you for listening and thank you for subscribing.